What if your most cherished, deeply held beliefs, the ones you think define your character, were not actually yours?
Mm.
What if they were just, I don't know, sophisticated patterns of information, like software running on your brain, trying desperately to copy themselves into the next available head?
That perspective is pretty much the foundational premise of memetics. It's this whole field that attempts to shift ideas from, abstract philosophy into quantifiable science. It
Right.
really forces us to see culture and thought not as these unique human achievements, but as replicators just competing in a Darwinian struggle for survival.
And that's our mission today. We are diving deep into this concept of the meme, and we're moving entirely beyond the internet joke. We're exploring the ambitious, some would say audacious, attempt to establish memetics as a rigorous science.
It is audacious.
Look at its metrics, its surprising military applications, and the genuinely unsettling implications this has for our sense of free will and human agency.
The central framing principle here, and this is drawn directly from our sources, is really powerful. It's that humanity is the product of two blind replicators.
Two.
Two. The first, which we all know well, is the gene. The second is the meme. And this model suggests that concepts, beliefs, tunes, fashions, you name it, are just patterns fighting for persistence. It treats cultural evolution like biological evolution, but running at a dramatically faster speed.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to define what we're actually studying here.
Let's do it.
So let's start there. The definition of a mean seems slippery. Our sources present a few variants, and it seems to depend on whether you're like a cognitive scientist or a sociologist. What's the core agreement?
The ambiguity is, I think, unavoidable, largely because the field is trying to bridge the internal mental world with the external observable world.
Okay.
But we can distill it into three core ideas. First, you've got the meme as a purely internal unit. It's cultural information residing in a brain like a neural structure. Think of it as the recipe for an idea.
The subjective experience of the thought.
Exactly. Then the second definition is the external observable thing. An artifact, a behavior, a piece of objective information that can be copied, imitated, or learned.
So that's the meal cooked from the recipe, like a catchy jingle or a fashion trend.
A fashion trend, a new construction technique, yeah. And the third definition sort of brings those two together in a really functional way.
How so?
It does. The third, and I'd say this is arguably the most useful for tracking cultural spread, is that a meme is a pattern of information that has evolved a form which actively induces people to repeat that pattern.
So it's like an infectious agent.
It is. It's designed specifically for its own replication, completely irrespective of its truth value.
So if the definition is all about replication, let's
Yeah.
look at the cycle. Our sources use this classic communication system analogy, that reminds me of Claude Shannon's iconic model, to map how a meme jumps from one host to the next.
Yeah, that's a great way to picture it. So the cycle starts with a creator or, a retransmitter. The meme gets packaged, whether as a speech, a text message, a piece of art, and is sent to a potential host.
And then the crucial phase is reception.
Reception and decoding.
Yeah.
And the potential host only becomes an actual host if the meme successfully clears certain internal selection and fitness criteria. It has to be selected, understood, and deemed worthy of mental real estate.
And once it's taken root, the new host becomes a propagator, replicating and transmitting that meme, maybe even changing the transmission vector entirely.
Exactly.
The concept stays, but the medium shifts from, say, a sermon to a viral TikTok video.
Precisely. And to survive this relentless, noisy competition, a meme needs high survival value, or what they call memetic fitness. The sources emphasize three primary qualities, and they echo the criteria for genes.
Mature.
Longevity, so how long it lasts in memory. Fecundity, which is just how many copies it makes. And most critically, copying fidelity.
How accurately it's reproduced.
Right, across multiple hosts. If the concept is too complex or easily distorted, its fitness just plummets. Ease of communication almost always increases fitness.
Okay, here is where the rubber meets the road for me. If memetics is serious about being a science, it can't just be an interesting analogy. You have to measure it. How do you possibly quantify something as ephemeral as a unit of cultural information?
This is the massive challenge. And to move from analogy to a measurable field, researchers proposed 4 initial metrics. These are designed to evaluate and compare the competitive success of different memes. They're really the foundation for turning this theory into something testable.
Give us the breakdown of those 4 quantitative goals.
Okay, first is propagation. This measures the breadth of the spread. So you're looking at the raw number of recipients, the specific types of groups it gets into.
Like economic class, political affiliation.
Exactly. And the geographic dispersion, is it local, regional, or global?
Okay, what's next?
Next, we have persistence. Now, this sounds a bit like longevity, but it's more nuanced.
How so?
It is. Persistence distinguishes between the duration of the meme's transmission, so how long the idea is actively being discussed or shared publicly, versus the duration it remains stored in the host's memory, even if it's dormant.
Like a childhood song you haven't heard in 30 years.
Perfect example. Highly persistent in memory, but low current transmission.
Okay, third is impact. This seems self-explanatory, but our sources break it down.
That's right. They separate the impact on the individual host, the personal consequence, like adopting a new skill, from the impact on the group or society, like changing a law or starting a movement.
And the fourth metric is the one that seems most technically confusing to me. Entropy, or size, quantified in bits. How does a belief system get measured in megabytes?
I know it sounds strange, but this metric tries to quantify complexity or informational density. It uses data storage size bits as an analogy for the informational payload a meme carries.
So like a small meme would be?
A small meme, maybe under 100K bits, might be a simple proverb, a brand logo, or a specific memorable phrase. Minimal data for high fecundity.
A bumper sticker slogan.
Precisely. Conversely, a large meme, say over 100 million bits, represents a huge informational structure.
An entire ideology.
An entire ideology, a religious scripture, a massive legal and constitutional framework. And this metric matters because, generally, higher complexity, larger size, makes the meme harder to transmit with high fidelity, but it also makes it more resistant to complete erasure.
That makes the technical aspect much clearer.
Yeah.
I did note that researchers are looking at things like fMRI, social network modeling, and neuroeconomics to try and gather this empirical data.
They have to. But this necessity leads directly to the primary critique against the field.
Which is?
Memetics has been plagued by extreme abstraction and overambition. I mean, it's attempting to use this framework to explain impossibly complex phenomena like consciousness or the origin of religion, often before the basic evidence collection mechanisms are even fully developed.
That sounds like turning a promising science into premature philosophy.
It absolutely risks that. And here's the core limitation. Internal memes, the neural unit just sitting in the brain, are not yet indirectly demonstrable. We can look at brain activity, but we can't point to the specific neurological signature of the belief that the sky is blue.
Okay, so if the mission is to quantify all ideas, how would a researcher using fMRI even begin to quantify something like faith? I mean, the belief in the absence of evidence, which you mentioned, is a key defensive meme.
That is the essential, currently unanswerable question. You can quantify the behavior that results from faith charitable giving, church attendance, but identifying and isolating the cognitive unit responsible for that blind trust. It remains elusive. Until that gap is bridged, critics argue, we are just stuck modeling the outputs, not the replicators themselves.
And this brings us to what I think is the most unsettling insight from our sources. A meme's success is entirely independent of whether it is good, true, or beneficial for the host carrying it.
Completely independent.
The idea just needs to be a good replicator.
That disconnect between replicative power and host welfare, that's the core mechanism that just chips away at our sense of agency. A meme's goal is persistence. Our welfare is coincidental.
Can you give us a classic example of a high-fitness meme that offers zero host benefit?
Astrology is a fantastic example. It's a hugely successful meme complex because it offers these low-cost, spurious explanations for human differences. It fulfills a deep psychological need for predictability and belonging.
Right.
It is incredibly easy to remember and highly resistant to being overturned by evidence, despite hundreds of scientific experiments showing its claims are false. It survives because it's comforting and memorable, not because it's factual.
So it's a mental parasite that
Right.
pays its rent by offering psychological comfort.
And then you have actively dangerous memes. The source points out that some memes manipulate us into collaborating on their replication even when they pose a direct threat to our health or survival.
Like what?
Well, consider the phenomenon of well-publicized martyrdom. A suicidal meme or an aggressive ideological meme can achieve massive spread not despite the host's death, but because of it. It inspires others to die for the same cause, using devotion as a transmission vector.
It exploits the deepest human wiring. What's fascinating when we compare this to biological evolution is the inheritance mechanism. Genetic evolution is non-Lamarckian. You can't pass on muscles you acquired through training to your child.
No, you can't.
But cultural evolution, the movement of memes, is radically different.
It is entirely Lamarckian. This is a critical point. In cultural evolution, acquired characteristics can be inherited or copied instantly. If you acquire a crucial piece of wisdom or invent a dramatically better algorithm, that improvement is copied by everyone immediately.
If that's the case, it makes sense why culture evolves at breakneck speed relative to the, glacial pace of genetics.
It does. We don't have to wait for a random genetic mutation to improve the fishhook. The improved knowledge is copied instantly. And this ability to rapidly incorporate beneficial, learned information makes culture a vastly more powerful adaptive system than biology. But it also means culture can rapidly incorporate detrimental yet sticky ideas.
And if we apply this speed and this parasitic view to identity, what does this framework say about the nature of the self?
Oh, this is the really challenging part. It suggests the self is not a singular entity, but a co-adapted meme complex.
A what?
A co-adapted meme complex. A highly successful bundle of ideas, beliefs, and behaviors that have learned to thrive together within a single brain. From the meme's eye view, brains are simply resources, sophisticated hosts.
So we don't really own our ideas.
The framework suggests we don't. I are the artifacts created when successful memes restructure a human brain to make it a more fertile environment for their continued propagation.
That is deeply challenging to the idea of individualism. Let's shift gears a bit. Let's look at where this theory transitions from the academic to the highly practical. Our sources detail significant interest from areas like military and counterterrorism.
The military interest is explicit and long-standing. Memetics is viewed as providing prospective value for understanding and executing both conventional and asymmetric operations. Former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld was quoted observing that the center of gravity of this war are on the centers of public opinion.
That quote perfectly encapsulates the memetic battlefield. The struggle is no longer just about territory. It's about controlling the informational and psychological environment.
It is. The military's goals include assessing the current information environment, disseminating truthful information rapidly, mitigating messages that undermine operations, and crucially, disrupting adversary psychological operations. They are trying to identify and suppress infectious, detrimental memes while promoting high-fidelity, beneficial ones.
The battle for moral authority.
Which is a highly fit meme in asymmetric conflicts.
Now, moving to civilian applications, the key here is rapid spread, often relying on the law of the few, which describes information epidemics.
That law posits that in any social epidemic, whether it's a flu virus or a new trend, a few key people are responsible for causing the majority of the effect. The success hinges on identifying and activating three types of individuals.
Okay, who are they?
You have connectors, who are these gregarious people who bridge many different social groups. They're the hubs in the network.
People who know everyone.
Right. Then you have mavens. They're the knowledgeable experts, the information specialists whose opinions carry weight because they synthesize and understand the data. And finally, salesmen.
And they're the persuasive ones.
Uniquely persuasive people. They aren't necessarily experts, but they can articulate the meme in a compelling, magnetic way. The internet, of course, just took this word-of-mouth marketing and turbocharged it.
It turned the local maven into a global influencer. The sources also mention a darker, highly specific contagion, the Werther effect.
Yeah, David Phillips coined that term to describe imitative suicidal behavior transmitted via mass media, named after a Goethe novel. Studies show that teenage suicides increased significantly following nationally televised stories of suicide. It's a stark demonstration of how a highly emotional, tragic event can become a self-replicating meme.
Exploiting the vulnerability of the host.
And their suggestibility, yes.
And perhaps the clearest analogy to a biological parasite are those infamous mind viruses.
Oh, yeah. Think of the persistent, non-beneficial chain letters and email warnings, the good times or pen pal greetings warnings that circulated relentlessly in the early internet.
I remember those.
These are low-complexity, non-beneficial memes that survive by having one simple instruction: spread me now. They often exploit the host's altruism, I don't want any harm to befall my friends, to command their own replication. They just bypass the host's rational filter through emotional manipulation.
So if we look back at our sources, what are the biggest takeaways for the listener to carry forward from all this?
I'd say there are two major takeaways. First, Memetics offers specific tools, those metrics like propagation and impact, to try and quantify and track cultural evolution, moving the study of ideas away from pure philosophy.
And the second.
Second, and more profoundly, it forces us to acknowledge that our minds are constantly engaged in a Darwinian competition among ideas, and the selection process is often arbitrary. It favors fitness over truth or goodness.
This takes us back to how the brain actually processes all these competing claims.
Exactly. We need to introduce the concept of bounded rationality. The brain, fundamentally, optimizes for speed and coherence over absolute truth.
It's a shortcut.
It is. It accepts beliefs as factual for processing efficiency, which leads to high levels of misbelief simply because a simple, sticky explanation is better than a slow, complex truth.
Because we require a coherent reality, even if that reality is just a patchwork of convenient memes.
The mind autonomously constructs narratives to create an illusion of continuity and coherence. It revises those stories retroactively, often with or without any actual evidence. This system allows highly successful, but flawed, ideas to flourish because the mind prioritizes a usable worldview over a perfectly accurate one.
Which brings us back full circle to the question that started our deep dive. If the self is merely a co-adapted meme complex, this bundle of ideas that found stability together, and those memes rely on brains like ours to select, vary, and replicate them. Here's the final provocative thought. When you make a deeply personal decision, how much of your individual choice is simply a function of providing a fertile, high-fidelity environment for the next successful idea to multiply? Are you the chooser or the carefully engineered host?